It was just past 3 a.m. on a quiet stretch of highway between Great Falls and Helena, Montana. The kind of road where you can drive for miles without seeing a single car. I had my high beams on, cutting through the darkness, when I noticed something moving across the median up ahead. I assumed it was a deer. Out there, that's always the first thought. I eased off the gas and slowed to about 30 miles per hour, watching the shape carefully, but then I realized it was standing upright. My stomach dropped. I kept slowing, squinting through the windshield, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. And then it hit me. It was a man in blue coveralls, standing completely still on the side of the highway at 3 in the morning in the middle of nowhere. That alone would have been enough to unsettle anyone. But as my headlights fully illuminated the figure, my blood ran cold. It wasn't a man, not entirely. The thing standing on that highway had the body of a man, but where the head should have been sat the severed head of a pig. Not a mask, not a costume. A real pig's head, resting on its shoulders like it belonged there. I yanked the wheel to the left lane, my heart pounding out of my chest, and as I passed, the thing lunged at my truck. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I drove all the way to Helena before I even thought to check if it had grabbed on somewhere. Nothing was there, but to this day on that stretch of road, I do not slow down for anything. I've been driving big rigs for years. When you're behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler, you pick up certain habits. One of mine was that whenever I spotted trash or cardboard boxes on the road, I'd just roll right over them. No point swerving for an empty box. The truck handles it fine. I'd done it hundreds of times without a second thought. But one afternoon I was cruising down the highway when I spotted a cardboard box sitting in the road up ahead. Nothing unusual. I lined up to roll over it like always. And then something stopped me. Not a sound. Not a reason. Just this sudden, overwhelming feeling that I needed to swerve around it. So I did. I passed the box and glanced in my rearview mirror, half curious. And I watched as the top of the cardboard box opened up, and a little kid, no older than 5 or 6, climbed out. The child looked around for a second, then turned and walked back toward a nearby house like absolutely nothing had happened. I pulled over and sat there for a long time. I never drove over another box again. I was on a long haul and had pulled over to sleep in my cab somewhere on a remote stretch of road. It was pitch black outside. No streetlights, no other vehicles, nothing. I settled in and was just drifting off when something made me open my eyes. In the distance, through the windshield, I could see a small light. Faint at first, like a single candle flame floating in the darkness. I sat up and watched it. It was moving, getting closer. I told myself it was nothing. A flashlight, maybe. Someone out for a late walk. But as the light drew nearer, the details came into focus, and what I saw made me unable to move. It was a woman. Ancient looking, impossibly old, her skin so wrinkled it barely looked like skin at all. She was draped in long, dark gowns that dragged along the ground. In one hand she held a single candle, its flame burning perfectly still despite the open air. And her fingernails. Her fingernails were so long they had curled back on themselves like claws. She walked slowly, deliberately, heading straight toward a rocky hillside. And then, without pausing, without looking up, she walked directly into the side of the hill and disappeared. No door, no cave entrance I could see. Just gone, like the earth had swallowed her. I started the engine and left without looking back. I never parked on that road again. It was getting very late, and I needed rest. I pulled into a rest area off the highway somewhere in the middle of nowhere. The parking lot was completely empty. No other trucks, no cars, no people. Just silence and darkness. I climbed into the back of my cab, got comfortable, and closed my eyes. I was almost asleep when I heard it. A dog, barking somewhere in the distance. I didn't think much of it at first, but the barking got louder and louder and closer until it was right outside my driver's side door. I sat up slowly and leaned toward the window to look out. It wasn't a dog. It was a person, looking directly at me, growling, and trying to get in. I didn't hesitate. I fired up the engine and tore out of that rest stop without looking back. I never stopped there again. To this day, I cannot explain what that thing was or what it wanted. All I know is that whatever it wasn't human. I was a night driver cutting through the mountains of Pennsylvania, trying to keep pace with a flatbedder ahead, moving fast through the curves. At some point, I started falling behind. The van was leaning too hard and I needed to ease off. I reached down to grab my drink, looked back up at the road, and that's when I saw him. A man standing just off the shoulder, just outside the tree line, wearing what appeared to be a soldier's uniform. It looked like Revolutionary War era. He even had a musket. A reenactor? Out here? At this hour? As I got closer, the man was staring right at me. Then he started walking back into the tree line, still looking at my truck. And before he made it through the trees, he vanished, literally disappeared into thin air. I had my windows down. The moment he disappeared, the air around me turned ice cold. Not slightly cooler, cold, like someone had opened a freezer door at 70 miles per hour. After about a mile, the air warmed up again. A heavy feeling of sadness came over me and stayed for a long time after. I never stopped on that stretch of road again. I had pulled off at an exit ramp in Missouri to stretch my legs and smoke a cigarette. It was the middle of the night. No houses nearby, no lights, nothing. Just highway and darkness. I had barely taken 2 puffs when I heard a little girl giggle somewhere nearby. I spun around. Nobody there. Then a small voice said, clear as day, "Hi, mister." I called back, trying to stay calm, asking where she was, if she was okay. And the voice replied, "My mommy says you'll be okay. Don't worry." I asked what she meant. No answer. Complete silence. Then I felt it. The unmistakable feeling that someone was standing right next to me. I couldn't see anyone, but the presence was undeniable. Strangely, though, it didn't feel threatening. It felt almost protective. I finished my cigarette and got back on the road, shaking it off. A few hours later, my fuel warning light came on. I realized I had forgotten to fill up at my last stop. I scrambled to find the nearest truck stop, set the GPS, and drove straight for it. As I rolled up to the fuel line, my truck started sputtering. I barely made it before the engine died. I had run out of fuel right as I pulled onto the fuel line. Had I not stopped at that off-ramp when I did, I would have been stranded alone on a dark highway in the middle of the night. It wasn't until I was standing there fueling up that it all hit me. That little voice, that presence beside me, the warning I didn't understand until it was almost too late. I never figured out who or what spoke to me that night. I was heading north through the Rocky Mountains of Colorado for the first time, taking it slow, hazards on, right lane, nice and careful. On my way up, I passed another truck pulled over on the shoulder. Nothing unusual, but on the way back down, and anyone who has driven an 18-wheeler through the Rockies knows that going downhill is where things get genuinely terrifying. The same truck I had passed earlier flew by me in the left lane, going downhill at a speed that seemed suicidal. And then I noticed it. The trailer brakes were on fire, not smoking, on fire. The truck looked like a comet blazing down the side of the mountain. I grabbed my CB radio and called out, "Hey driver, your brakes are on fire. I mean literally on fire." A few seconds of static. Then a calm, gravelly voice came back, cool as a cucumber, and said simply, "I know." And then he disappeared around a curve. I never saw a crash, never saw emergency crews, never heard anything on the radio about an accident that night. The only thing I found at the base of the mountain was a single discarded fire extinguisher lying on the ground. I never found out who that driver was, or whether he made it. I'd pulled over for the night near the Arizona Welcome Center off E40. It had been a long haul and I needed rest badly. I killed the engine, leaned back, and closed my eyes. I don't know how long I had been asleep when I heard it, a light knocking on my door. I sat up slowly, groggy and disoriented, I looked out the window and there she was, an old woman standing right outside my cab. And I mean old, not just elderly, ancient. She was wearing nothing but an oversized sweatshirt, no pants, no shoes, nothing else. Just standing there in the Arizona darkness in the middle of the night, completely alone. I rolled my window down just a crack. She looked up at me, and in the tiniest, most unsettling little voice I have ever heard in my life, she said, "There's something in my car making a weird noise. I need help with it." I stared at her for a long moment. Something felt wrong, not just off, deeply instinctively wrong. There were no other cars around, no headlights in the distance, nothing. Just this woman appearing out of nowhere in the dead of night on a stretch of highway most people don't stop on. I rolled my window back up. I don't know who she was. I don't know where she came from. I don't know what was in that car she wanted me to look at. And honestly, I never want to find out. I started the engine and left. I have not stopped at that rest area since. My dispatcher called me in for what seemed like a straightforward job. A company needed a refrigerated truck run out to a research facility. Simple enough. I showed up, they loaded the trailer, and before I pulled out, one of the managers came to my window and gave me very specific instructions. Don't stop. If you break down, call this number immediately. Any problems at all, call this number. Don't open the trailer. I asked what I was hauling. He just looked at me and said it was a sensitive delivery. The whole drive felt strange. The trailer barely registered any weight on the scales. Whatever was inside, there wasn't much of it. I kept my eyes on the road and my hands on the wheel, telling myself to just focus on getting there. When I finally arrived at the facility, a team was waiting for me. They unloaded quickly and quietly. And as they opened the trailer doors and I caught a glimpse inside, I understood why they hadn't told me what I was carrying. Bodies, human bodies. Two of them, sealed and frozen, donated to science. Nobody had warned me. Nobody had explained. They just loaded them up, handed me a number to call in case of emergency, and sent me down the highway in the middle of the night with two frozen corpses in my trailer. I sat in that parking lot for a long time after they unloaded. I still think about that drive sometimes. The long, empty highway, the trailer barely making a sound behind me, and knowing now what was back there the whole time. I got a call on my CB one night that no driver ever wants to hear. There was a car out there, a sedan, driving directly into oncoming traffic on a two-lane rural road somewhere near where I live. The CB crackled with warnings being passed from driver to driver. Keep your eyes open. He's out there. He's coming. I gripped the wheel tighter and slowed down, scanning the darkness ahead. And then I saw the headlights. They were in my lane, coming straight at me. I watched the car weave left and right, cutting off every vehicle it passed. Cars were swerving onto the shoulder, into ditches, doing anything to avoid being hit. And then the car straightened out and locked in on me. There was nowhere for me to go. An 18-wheeler doesn't dodge like a car. I hit the brakes as hard as I could, but I knew it wasn't going to be enough. In the last second before impact, my headlights fully lit up the driver's face through his windshield. He was smiling, not panicking, not confused, not afraid, smiling, wide and calm, like a man who had exactly what he wanted. The crash was violent. I was hurt badly, but I survived. The man in the sedan did not. To this day, I cannot shake that image from my mind. The way he looked at me in those final seconds, the smile on his face. Whatever he was looking for that night on that dark road, he found it.